historically. I had one boy, Jai Sachi Nandandas. I had him go over there and check out. I wanted to know. So he went over and he reported me. He interviewed the Pujari and said, yes, we put it down. He said, where's the printing press? We heard that there's a printing press there. He said, no, we decided to move it into the basement. He said, and then, well, it was there, and then it stopped printing. So you see that, you're doing something right. You know, you open a bottle, like Prabhupada said in this famous example, that I was present when he said that. You know that example? You know how to open bottles? You remember that? When Prabhupada, in his last days, wanted to take medicine, he asked one disciple, Bhakti True Swami, he was the person who would give him medicine because he was Calcutta boys, you know, they had a particular rasa, Prabhupada with Bhakti True Swami. So then Prabhupada said, did you close the bottle? He said, no, Prabhupada. He said, that is your disease. He said, all of you. You know how to open bottles? You don't know how to close them. You start so many new things, you do not see the consequences. The consequences are not visible right away. That you see after some time, you know. So we are very eager to open bottles. This is our that is our disease, particularly in Western countries. Everything goes, you know, everything goes, in the name of Krishna even, you know. So very dangerous path. It's very dangerous to follow somebody else's path or to imitate without knowledge. And particularly to cross the instructions of the spiritual master. Whether it's Bhaktisiddhanta or whether it's Prabhupada, it doesn't make a difference. You know, Prabhupada gave us a very specific set what to do and what not to do. And I find in my life, I was never in confusion about what we should do, because you just ask yourself this simple question, what would Prabhupada say to that? It's very simple. Simple question. What would Prabhupada say to that? And you know immediately what he would like and what he wouldn't like. You see, he knew better than anybody of us how to please Krishna. And so trying to concoct is bringing us off the path. We don't see it. There is a saying that the way to hell is paved with good intentions. The intentions are good, you know. Now let's do it differently. But the way to hell is paved with good intentions. The intentions are good, but you don't see the consequences of that. You don't see the consequences of that. You know, as soon as you deviate from the standards of the acharyas, you know, you don't see the consequences. And in the case of the Gaudiya Math, it's stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they became useless. And then Prabhupada said, every instruction outside the instruction of the spiritual master is useless, asara. And as a result, see, then in the next verse was that, and this is what Krishna's Kaviraj writes, you know, that in the verses, that just as the wheat and the shaft is separated in due course of time by the wind, right? The wind just throws the grains into the ground and the shaft is flying away, right? So in the same way, those who deviate, they wither. They shrink, they wither away. They won't have potency anymore. You know, and that is the history of the Gaudiya Math. They lost their potency. They lost their potency, and they couldn't make devotees also. And they're fighting with each other. If somebody joins and somebody tries to convince him from another math, it was so graphical that one person was killed in the temple because he stole a devotee from another math. I mean, it's not ISKCON's history is not the only one which is full of surprises and full of unwanted or unbeneficial events. It happens everywhere, because as soon as there's deviation, then it becomes a problem. So we have to be very careful with that. Like in the case of Bhaktisiddhanta himself, people started to manipulate his books right in the beginning, 1936, after he died. So it is better. When I was a little boy, I remember if you would drive a train, it was still a steam train. I used to drive in steam engines, like this, because you lean out of the window and some soot falls into your eye, many times. So there was a sign in French, ne pas se pencher au dehors. Do not lean out. Dangerous. In Spanish, epidemiculosos, borgasi. Very dangerous to lean out. And then, bitte nicht herauslehnen. Lehnen Sie sich nicht aus dem Zug raus. Warum? Leaning far enough, there's a pole, a telegram pole or something, and your head is gone. So we have to be careful. Prabhupada used to say, conservative is intelligent. Be conservative, rather be careful. That's intelligent, Prabhupada said. It's not intelligent to say, well, let's do it differently today, from now on. Let's institute this or institute that. That is not intelligent. That's a very dangerous path. That's a very dangerous path, and it doesn't work like that. Those who are, like Lord Chaitanya, he's God himself. And the spiritual master told him, you are not very smart. You should just chant. Right? And so he would chant. And then somebody asked him of the Mayavadis in Benares, why are you always singing and dancing? He said, my spiritual master told me that I'm not very smart. So therefore I'm singing and dancing. So he was repeating the words of his guru, verbatim, that means down to the letter. Verbatim, down to the letter. He was repeating the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. So this is a very important principle, and we have to, sometimes we may not be able to come to that standard. It may be that, yes, I cannot come to this high standard Prabhupada was giving out of whatever reason, but we shouldn't change the philosophy. That means we shouldn't change the philosophy to make it convenient for us, That we can't do. You can't change the philosophy. You have to say, well, I'm just a rascal, I'm just a poor boy, I have some problem. That I may say somebody attached to drink tea. Maybe that he can't give up his habit to drink tea. Like, when I was in Sweden, I sat in Prabhupada's room, and the ambassador of India came. And Prabhupada told him that he should give up all sinful habits and should just take sannyas, basically speaking. And so Prabhupada, he said, what do I have to do? What are the principles? And Prabhupada enumerated the 4 regular principles. And he shook his head and said, Swamiji, I cannot give up drinking tea. It was right. I was right sitting there. You can't give up drinking tea. And Prabhupada said, not a big thing. Drink some herbal tea or something. I can't. I have to have real black tea, from Darjeeling. Darjeeling? That tea is so nice, I cannot give it up. So then Prabhupada said, all right, in this case, you should drink this tea, but you should think that Krishna has a taste of tea. So Prabhupada gave him a bridge. So it may be that we can't come to the highest standard, some devotee, but he should not change the philosophy. That's the standard, that's the way to go. No, it is not. He should always think, how can I come to the highest platform? How can I do it? And what is the best way? The best way, if we have anarthas, if we have impurities and all that, what is the best thing? How do we deal with that? The best idea is to approach Lord Nrsingadev. I want to read you something that I came across recently. that Pankaj Rangri, just before he left his body, he was asked an interesting question by one devotee, namely, let me read it to you. Where would that be? Let me just think for a moment. Okay, I got it. Yeah, I got it. Here it is. So he was asked, let me read it to you. Where's my key? Can you get the mouse? How can we live without mouse? So Pankaj Rangri Prabhu was asked once this question, Prabhuji, ultimately you Navadvip Dham, where prem to Radha Krishna is given and Ashta Shaktis are on the altar, why would you still worship Stanu Nishinga? Do you think that sweet mood of Radha Krishna and the ferocious mood of Lord Chaitanya are in sync with each other? You know, are they compatible? It's a good question. I mean, I remember when Hansa Dutta in Germany, he wanted to establish, he had a desire to establish Lord Nishingadev. And Prabhupada wrote back, we have the letter, that yes, you can, but it has to be in a different temple. At least in a temple room in a different, like they have in Mayapur, they have a cove, a chapel, small chapel, where Lord Nishingadev is sitting, because it will interfere, it will disturb Radha Krishna. We had Radha Krishna on the altar. It will disturb the mood of Radha Krishna. You know, it should be separate. So the answer was, His Grace Pankaj Rangri Prabhu may rest in peace. Not rest in peace, may be very active in peace in the spiritual world. Very beautifully explained. The process of worship of Radha Krishna is filled with a lot of blocks, hurdles. Only someone who has pure love for Radha Krishna can swim through this ocean. There are many obstacles on this path. Now we worship Lord Nishingadev that his nails uproot all the obstacles on our path. Then our path to Radha Madhava is straightforward. And he added a very beautiful point. Let me just see. Radha Madhava observe it in their pastimes 24 hours a day. If you call to Radha Madhava, I have this body problem, I have health issues, I have fever, I having to do this or that. Are we the servants of Radha Madhava or are they our servants? Right? If we ask them so many things, that means we want to make them our servants. Like people in material consciousness, they go in front of Radha Madhava and pray. My dear Krishna, please give me a house by the sea, color TV, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Right? That's the prayer. And so he says, are they our servants? Or he said, therefore Radha Madhava mercifully have taken the incarnation of Nishingadev on the pretext of protecting Prahlad Maharaj. It was a pretext because Prahlad was already protected. Lord Nishingadev appeared to give the statement to the world. Radha Madhava is saying, I'm busy in my pastimes, so if you need something, please contact Lord Nishingadev. Very clear, you see? Or Prabhupada also said we can approach Lord Nityananda on stage. When we installed the deities in Vrindavan, Prabhupada explicitly said, because we don't have Lord Nishingadev in the altar, in the temple room there, he explicitly said, now if you have, your problems are solved. He said, we are installing Lord Nityananda and Lord Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, He said, now if you have problems, you should go to especially Nityananda. Nityananda, because he's even more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. How can that be? Lord Chaitanya is more merciful than Radharani. Namo Varanyaya, Krishna Prem Padayati, Krishna Krishna Chaitanya, Namni Guru, Tvisa Namaha. Even more merciful. So he said, you can go to Lord Nityananda and you can pray. And that's why there are prayers to appeal for the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Nityananda, Vadutendu, Vasura Palabalabaha, Janabhijivitapati, Krishna Prema Pradada Prabhu, Padamavati Sura Shiman Sachinana Purvajaha Bhavanmato, Ratratarakta Gaura Kalivara. There's this prayer, particularly appealing for the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And you should know these prayers. You should know prayers. Vandanam, very important. Anybody, Srila, who wrote that prayer? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he hangs, at the end of the prayer, he hangs a blessing. He said, anybody who prays this prayer before Nityananda, every day before 8:30, he will go back to Godhead. Who in the world wouldn't like to have that prayer? Isn't it? We should get that prayer and learn that by heart. I did it a long time ago. Obviously. Or you pray to Lord Balaram. There's another prayer. Not whimsically going to Lord Balaram. There's a prayer given, particularly to Lord Balaram, that we pray for, become free from lust, anger, greed, and illusion. Etc. And so there's a prayer to Lord Nrsingadev how to do this. You know, how to ask for his protection. So anytime you need protection in this world, anytime you need uprooting any anarthas or any problems, there's a solution there. You don't have to worry, how do I do this for the next 20 years? How do I get rid of my anarthas? There's an answer given. Please contact Lord Nrsingadev. His nails are very powerful and he's infallible. Now listen to the prayer of Lord Nrsingadev. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasingaya. That's easy. We all know that one. We just pulled up the prayer. There it is. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasingaya. Namas Tejas Tejasya. O power of power. It's the power of power. Avir Avir Bhava. Please manifest. Vajra Naka. Naka means claws. Claws. And Naka, Vajra means who are like thunderbolts. Like thunderbolts. Vajra. Like Lord Indra, he has Vajra. You know, and by the way, the other day I mentioned that Indra is understood in German, old German mythology, as being the weather god who drives over the clouds and makes a rumbling sound, and he has a thunderbolt and destroys trees, mountains, everything. And he's called Donar. In Scandinavia, and in Iceland he's called Thor. It's the same God, you know, that appears, and these gods appear not just in Indian, these demigods, they can appear everywhere. And so he has this Vajranaka, the claws like a thunderbolt, and he has Vajradamstra. Damstra, the word dense. You go to dentist, or you have a denture, like myself. So the Damstra, Vajra Damstra, that your teeth are like thunderbolts. Now it comes. Avira Vibharva, please manifest. Vajranaka, your claws, who are like thunderbolts. Vajra Damstra, your teeth are Karmashayan. There's this word for you and for me. Karmashayan means our demonic mentality. Destroy my demonic mentality. Why are we hindered in spiritual life? Or why are we doing things what we should not do? Because of demonic tendencies. I told you sometimes in the beginning of my series of lectures, and in the first yuga, demons and devotees live on different planets. In the next yuga, they live on the same planet. In the next yuga, they marry each other. In the next yuga, there's a demon and a devotee in the same breast. So everybody of us has a little Kamsa, a little Hiranyakashipu, a little Hitler in his heart. So, or a little Stalin, a little bit. That we can become very angry, we become very envious sometimes. And so these are demonic tendencies. And there is a way to do that. There's a way given to us by the Lord himself to approach it. Lord Nrsingadev, to destroy our demonic qualities. And then he says, Randaya Randa, please drive away, drive away. If you repeat in Sanskrit a word like this, Randaya means drive away. No, 2 times, Randaya Randa Tamo, drive away this darkness that is darkening my soul in the material world. Drive away this darkness. Grasa grasa om svaha. What does that mean? Grasa, oh yeah, that is drive away. Grasa grasa om svaha. Abhayam abhayam atmini bhuishtam stram. Abhayam. Bhayam means fear. And abhayam means free from fear. Drive away this. Where does fear come from? It's an interesting question. We should ask ourselves this question, philosophical question. Where does fear come from? Ignorance. Ignorance. Yes, more precisely. It's given in Shastra. Bhayam dvitiya biniveshataha syat. So bhayam means fear. Dvitiya biniveshataha. This is because of absorption in the material energy. Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body. That is the reason. Because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity turns away from the Supreme Lord, he forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. He wants to be served himself. He wants to be a master. This bewildering, and thus he forgets his constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency called Maya. This verse is in Srimad Bhagavatam. You make a note of it. Very important verse. Where do we have it? Can you imagine? I don't have the quotation. Huh? What is it?
5:18.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Bhayam dvitina biniveshata syat. All right, let me put this underneath for next time. What is it? 5?
That is Narasimha verses in 5th canto.
Huh?
Narasimha verses in 5th canto. Bhayam verses in 11th canto.
Somebody has to tell me.
11th canto, number 11, chapter 2.
And then?
Then exactly we don't know. We have to check. Bhayam.
We will not get up unless we know this verse, where it is. Any idea?
11 to 37.
233.
11 to 37.
37.
37. Okay, 11 to 37. Thank you very much. 11 to 37. Make a note of it. So that's why fear comes, because of misidentification with matter. We think matter is enjoyable, but it will create fear. Because you eat, as it says in the Bible, from the forbidden tree. It's very tasty, but you fall into Maya. It causes fear. Adam and Eve, this so-called forefathers of us, who are, as we know, allegorical figures, they're not real figures. It is an example. They ate from the forbidden tree, and immediately, why did they eat from the forbidden tree? Because the snake told them, if you eat from this tree, you become as good as God. There you have it. Very well described. If you eat from the tree of Maya, why do you want to eat? Because you become as good as God. You want to become as good as God. And then that's the end of your stay. There's a story, sometimes I like to quote from biblical scriptures. There's a story in the Old Testament, in the Torah, Jewish Torah. There were some people rebelling in the spiritual world. They had this mentality. And so this warrior, devotee, he asked this question, who is as good as God? And then all the fools lifted up their hands and said, out. He kicked them out. His name is Michael. The word Michael means one who thinks who is as good as God. So he asked this question, who is as good as God? And all the fools lifted up their hands. And he drove them out, you see. As soon as somebody thinks he is God, like when Prabhupada, I told you the story when Prabhupada drove his Ramachandra in his maroon ambassador. You're from Bengal, from Mayapur? You've seen that maroon ambassador, right? So he drove into Calcutta, and there on every tree there was this picture of this famous Bengali so-called guru with a turban on his head. Everybody has seen. And Prabhupada said to Ramachandra, what is he saying? Can you hear what he's saying? He said, no. He's saying something, Prabhupada said. I don't know, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, he's saying, I'm fool number one. It was Vivekananda, right? I'm fool number one. Because as soon as you say you're as good as God, you make a fool out of yourself. As soon as you claim independence from Krishna or from Guru, you make a fool out of yourself, 100%. So if people want to be modern, we're living in a modern world, therefore we have to be modern in our approach to Krishna consciousness. You make a fool out of yourself before you die. It becomes very clear that you made a mistake. That when in Mayapur, in front of the temple, we have this road, Bhakti Siddhanta Road, right? Satadanya, you know Satadanya? Godfather of mine? He does all the legal work in Calcutta since 40 years. And he went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, the Ganges is rising, but it doesn't come on our property. So Prabhupada said, why is that? He said, because of Bhaktisiddhanta's road. Then Prabhupada said, yes. As long as we stay on Bhaktisiddhanta's road, we are very safe. If you go to the left, you fall into the water. If you go to the right, you fall into the water. So Prabhupada made this point very clearly, that is the most important puja, Prabhupada said, of all pujas in the temple is actually the Guru Puja, because that links us to Krishna. Yes, that's why Sakshat Vinazamasa Shastra that Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sattvi should be worshipped as good as God, because he's God's representative, and Yasya Prasada Bhara Prasadam, man cannot make any progress outside of following the instructions of our spiritual authorities. You can't make any progress like that. And if you stick your nose out of the train in Germany, the example, then you get your head bashed. It's very simple, So Prabhupada, he was most intelligent because he completely stick to Bhaktisiddhanta's plan, 100%. Bhaktisiddhanta said he should go to the West. He went to the West. He printed books in English language, not only that, in all the languages of the world, He he became extremely empowered. Krishna Shakti Vinanata Pravatana. One cannot preach unless one is empowered by Krishna. It is not possible. What to speak of preaching so intensely or so successfully as Srila Prabhupada? You have to be extremely empowered. And so there was one, let me read this to you. There was our Govinda Dasi, Prabhupada disciple, found some old Indian newspaper, 1970, in an attic. Attic means, under the roof, in a box. And one had an article about Srila Prabhupada written by an astrologer. And he says in the newspaper, Indian newspaper, nobody can read, this is astrologer, nobody can read his chart. If they say, they're simply lying. This personality comes and goes at his own sweet will. He's not bound by anyone or anything. His stars are lined up perfectly. There's no question of karma. He's working directly under the will of God. And when he writes, his pen does not have in it ink. He doesn't write with ink. He said, his pen has in it the fire which will burn the ignorance of the whole world. There you see. That's Prabhupada's pen. And therefore we have to be very careful with Prabhupada's pen. Not that we think, well, let's change this a little bit and that. You see, there's a saying that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. When a committee designs a horse, somebody says, well, let's add this a little bit of a hump here, and instead of a horse hoof, let's make split hoof, and you change it. So a camel is a horse designed by a committee. Because in the committee, everybody wants to get a little bit of his idea into this. But it doesn't anymore a horse. It becomes a camel. Very different, So the camel is a horse designed by a committee that shows that this, what is this called? Shastra vidim utsrija bhatate kama karata, this mentality, kama karata, the activity or the mental activities which is fueled by lust. By lust. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to do so many things. That's fueled by lust, karma. And then we become bewildered by Maya. Mudo yam navijanati, the fools cannot understand me, Krishna says. So, therefore, the gist of the lecture is, my dear devotees, try to understand the power of Lord Nrsingadev. If you find yourself in trouble, then you have to turn to Krishna. And the best way to turn to Krishna is you turn to Lord Nrsingadev. He's waiting for that. That's his business. What is it? His Vajradamstra. And Namo Bhagavate Nrsinga Namaste Rastirasi Avir Avibha Vajradamstra Vajranaka. To destroy our darkness, to destroy our problems, our karmashaya, and our material tendency. Prabhupada, material tendency is so strong, and it's hard to change it. It's like if you try to bend, I saw one dog here, his tail is like this, Now if you straighten it, it will swing right back, right? Is it? You can straighten it all day, it will go right back. So we come with these tendencies from our previous material existence. This tendency is there. And we can easily manage if we turn to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself confirms, Matsita, if you fix your mind upon me, then sarva durgani mat prasaramba tarishasi, all the difficulties of material life become destroyed by my mercy. Machita Saro Durgani, Mat Prasaram Charishasi. There is stated. Any questions? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. I had one. Hare Krishna. You are telling about following the instructions of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Gaudiya Math failed to follow. That's why they also failed in the mission. Now Prabhupada has given something, and you have been directly interacting with Srila Prabhupada and many Prabhupada disciples. Now next generation then next generation will come. So how to keep that intact so that nothing is added or removed? What we should do?
You know, the number one medicine is to read Prabhupada's books. To read, you see, a lawyer encounters so many situations. How does he know what to do? Because he's reading the law book. That's important to read Prabhupada's books, because once we read Prabhupada's books, everything is very clear. Very clear. You cannot go way out and like I met one devotee in America, and I had an argument with him about something that Prabhupada said, and he said, well, I said, where's your love? Prabhupada said it very clearly. He said, well, I love Prabhupada, but I don't like what he says. I said, what is he doing in the Hare Krishna movement? If you don't like what Prabhupada says, get out. Be honest. Leave us, you know. So we know what is pavitim and what is not, what is nivritim, by studying Prabhupada's books and by hearing him speak and by studying his life. You know, that gives you all the ammunition. You know, like, I mean, my younger son is living in an ocean of ideas in Los Angeles. You know, there's so many ideas about this and that and that. And he's never bewildered. He said, because I read Prabhupada's books regularly. And he doesn't take positions. He doesn't argue with people. He doesn't, take a position of a messiah. He just keeps his mouth shut, but he sees exactly what's going on and what shouldn't go on. You know. So, yeah. You see, the situation, in difficult situations, we have to take knowledge from Prabhupada himself, how to stay clear, and we have to take shelter or support from Lord Nishingadev, from Krishna. We have to turn to Krishna. We can change something if we can change it. But if you can't change it, don't attempt it. There are many things you cannot change. Then why are you trying to change it? You know, you can pray to Krishna, let me change the things I can change. Okay. Let me accept the things I cannot change. And dear Krishna, give me the intelligence to know the difference between the two. You know? So, if you are worried about the Hare Krishna movement, the best way to go by is really pray the Nishinga prayers. Namaste Narashingaya. Prabhupada gave us his prayers particularly for the protection of the Hare Krishna movement. When he introduced that, he said, this prayer is there so that we can pray for the protection of the Hare Krishna movement. That's a very first-class approach to deal with difficulties that we experience within ISKCON. That's the best way. Approach Lord Nishingadev. My dear Lord, what can I do? I'm just a poor boy. I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. So what can I do? But we can pray to Lord Nishingadev. For us, by praying the Lord Nishingadev prayers, and for others, by praying these prayers, Namaste Narashingaya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One question more?
I will ask personally as time is up.
Huh?
I will ask personally, time is up.
Yeah, so time is up. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premananda. So I can